In this video, I'll show you how to get started with connected car data and how you can connect your first fleet vehicle using the high mobility platform. So the first place to start is on our platform, and that you can access from our website. If you haven't already, you can sign up and create a new account for free, or go ahead and sign in with your existing account. So I have a user account, so I just get straight into the console and the dashboard. So the dashboard of the console is where you can see all of your different data projects, essentially like data containers, where you can manage credentials, the data selection, and everything else related to a specific use case or a specific data access case. What's useful to know is that whenever you get access to the console, it can be a good idea to create a team. You can create a new team from here. And invite your colleagues or team members into the team so you can collaborate on the data projects and work together. In the team settings, you can also enter your company details that's needed for the later stages of the checkout that I will show you. And you can also learn a bit more about the different roles and permissions that the team members might have in your team, and you can enable two-factor authentication. To start with the data project is one step from here. As soon as you create a new data project, you can select what type. So today we support fleet use cases. So basically use cases where you as a fleet owner are using our platform, or you as a fleet solution provider is setting up your data access for your customers from here. We can set it up for the European region, right in fleet mileage as my use case. So for this specific demo, I will use mileage data that you can access, and go ahead and click on that. So as soon as I enter this project, I can see a specific project ID. So you can always reference to this ID when you're speaking with us, with customer support or anything like that. We see the overview of the consent time. So it's for fleet, it's Europe, and also selected brands and the billing and pricing. Always when you start a new project, the billing is by default credit card, but we will come back to that later. Now, if I select car data on the left hand menu, then that's the point where we can start with the data selection. And as soon as you go into one of these brands, you can see what type of packages we have available. You can see a price indication that those packages usually are offered for, and also a frequency how often data is being updated. So I can go ahead and select here, for instance, the odometer, because I will show the mileage data, and I will also use Postman at the later step to access that data. So as soon as I choose BMW, also Mini pops up here, as that's part of the same OEM offering. I can go ahead and choose mileage also for some other brands like Mercedes-Benz, for Kia, for instance from Ford. And sometimes you can see that mileage data or odometer data is available in several packages, and that usually there's a difference in the update frequency and some other data points in the package. So you will always have full clarity on what is available from the different packages. As you can see, in some packages are very extensive in type of what data you can get, what frequency, and it can go down to every 30 seconds or even every 1 second. For mileage data, in my use case, the frequency is not that important. It's more about the coverage. So I can go on and select more brands, but I'm pretty happy with this first selection here that I've made. Maybe I just add Stellantis as well, but I will be using data from BMW in this specific case that I will connect. The other tabs I have here are for managing API credentials. I'll come back to that in a second. We have a simulation studio where you can work in a sandbox environment, and then some other information that has to be filled out, like the website. I will just do that right now, as that's needed for submitting a project. And that's all that I need to do. So I've done the selections, and then now I want to submit. So up in the right hand corner, you can see the status of your project. So this one is in that draft state, and it's possible then to also publish it and to get access to live data. So of course, in the first step, when you sign up to the platform, you'd have access to all of what you've seen so far. You can create your project. You can also create simulators and sandbox. That's a topic for another video. But to go live and start testing with real vehicles, you will need to submit and you will need to have a commercial contract in place between you and us. And that's one of the steps that we are validating as you have submitted it, and our team on our side has a look on it, sees that the contract is in place, and usually the activation goes fast, especially for further activations. If you create new projects after the first one, we've done the first validation of contract and everything else. It's usually a matter of hours as we are activating an app submission. If I now try to submit, it will fail because I don't have credit card details. So if that happens to you and you want to pay by invoice, get in touch with us and we can sort it out with you. So in this case, I will just be back in a few minutes and I will have our back office updating the payment method for this specific project. We are back a few minutes later and I can go again into the fleet mileage project. And this time, if I scroll down, I can see the payment method is invoice, which means that I should be able to go ahead and submit the project. And now I can see a project has been submitted, is under review. This is also highlighted here in the status bar. And if you go back to your dashboard, you can also see that the fleet mileage project is in a pending state. So now I have to wait until our team has activated it, and we'll be back as soon as that has been done. It's now been a few minutes. I can refresh the page, and once I refresh, I can see fleet mileage turned green. So it means there are some activations. You can also see it from here, published with some changes, live since 9th of April. And if I go into the data selections from here, I can see that BMW has been activated because that's what we'll use for this demo. But for the other brands, it's still pending review. So we have its activation for all the different brands I've selected has not yet happened. But I can already start with BMW. And once there are changes to the project, for instance, OEMs are being activated, we also send out automatic notifications to your email. Now to work with this and actually adding my first vehicle, I can look at the documentation. So if I go into the API guides, we have a specific page for fleet clearance that walks you through how to do it, how to get an authentication token and creating a clearance for a vehicle by passing in the VIN and the brand. And we can see the same type of information also in an open API format where we have all the different endpoints listed. And for the demo, I will use the endpoint post fleets vehicles where I pass in the brand and the VIN. And as usual, fleets are made up of a lot of different vehicles, a lot of different brands. You can activate them all in one go or one by one as you wish. In terms of the schema, we also have a list of everything that's needed for the activations because you have to pass in the brand. You can see all the different brands that are supported today. And if you're working in a sandbox environment, you would pass in sandbox as the brand. Now for authenticating in our API, you will need the API credentials. That's where we go back here to our OAuth client. So you can see you can have it for sandbox, but also for live. In this case, we'll use the live credentials. It also shows the token URI. And you can simply follow the guide in the end and how to set this up and how to authenticate. For the authentication itself, we're using OAuth 2 client credentials. And there's also a separate page for instructions on how to use this endpoint from us to create a new access token that is valid for a certain period of time, and then you can use all of the different endpoints with the token until it expires. For our testing purpose, we will use Postman, and for that we have a Postman collection that you can access from our side. This is another repository, but we also got here Postman collection that we can search. Here we go in GitHub, and you can download these files right from here. Or even easier, we can go into postman.com, choose API network, and then search for our public collection from here, writing in high mobility, choosing fleet API, and we get to the instructions page, and we can just hit the orange button for importing this into our own local Postman. So I have Postman installed on my computer. I will import a copy. Choose my Postman workspace. and I should get it in here right away. Okay, here we go. So now we have the Postman collection here. You can see the different endpoints. We have list vehicles, add a new vehicle activation, get the status of a vehicle activation, revoke a vehicle. We have an endpoint for actually getting the data, and we have an endpoint for checking eligibility of a vehicle, basically if it can be activated or not. So all of these endpoints, they are all listed here in our API reference as well. So we have the clearance API, we have here the endpoints, and then we have another API for vehicle eligibility, and in the end also an API for fetching data from our REST API. So the REST API always returns the last available data. We have other options for data integration as well. If you go in here on streaming, you can see a preview of different options, MQTT, Kinesis, S3 that you can enable for getting push data delivered to you, but that will be a topic for another video. Now going back to Postman, we need to configure our environment, and that is also downloaded with the collection. So if I choose a fleet environment, I can see that we have here by default our sandbox API. So I just remove sandbox from here. Then I need to enter the client ID and the client secret. As we know, we can get that from here in our project view. For the live API, I can copy the client ID, add it here. And then for the client secret, I would just pause for a second. There we go. Now I've pasted the client secret here as well. I'll hit save, and I will also choose that fleet environment to be used in Postman. Now, before I can use these endpoints, I need to authenticate, and we also can make use of the built-in Postman functionality for that. If I go into authorization, the default settings are already using client credentials here. It uses the URL, token URL from the environment file, and the client ID and the client secret. And I can just hit get new access token. It succeeded. I have received an access token, and I will hit use token. So now this token will be used for all of the different endpoints that we have here. And Postman even manages the refresh of that access token because that's all based on OAuth 2 standard. If I try first the list vehicle endpoint, it comes back with no vehicles. So I can go ahead and add a new vehicle that should be activated. Just as you saw in the documentation before, we have to pass in the VIN and the brand. In my case, I will activate a BMW for this testing purpose. And I'll add in the VIN here. And I'll hit send. So as soon as you create a fleet clearance, as we call it, it goes into a pending state. So every new vehicle that is added always goes to a pending state because activations on the vehicle manufacturer side is always an asynchronous process. And we have different jobs in our platform that are trying to and attempting to activate vehicles at different times. It can take some time for the activation. For BMW, it's rather fast. With some brands, it's usually at the next time the vehicle is put into ignition on or the next time the vehicle is driven. And vehicles can also stay pending for several days even if the vehicle needs some over-the-air updates. But we always on our side also keep monitoring new activations to see if there are any issues with the new vehicle, the adding of new vehicles. So if I would try now and see if the vehicle has succeeded or not, I can still see it's still in the pending mode. So while we are waiting for this, I can also mention that we have webhooks that you can subscribe to. So if I go back here in webhooks, you can subscribe to Fleet Clearance Changed, entering your URL of your server and also secret key. And we have a documentation page for how that is set up as well. But essentially, you can get a webhook from us every time a vehicle clearance changes from pending to approved, from approved to revoked or rejected, anything like that. So it's not necessary to poll the status every few minutes, every hours, as I'm doing right now. So we keep it at a pause here. I think this activation will take about 10 to 20 minutes for this BMW. And once it hits approved, we'll continue from there. Now it's been around 10 minutes and we can go back to Postman to have a look and try again the list vehicles endpoint. and we can see that the vehicle has now been approved. Also in the endpoint, we return a change log where we have the date and time when the vehicle was added, when it was approved, and in the further state, you can always see when a vehicle is then also rejected or also revoked at the end when it's defleeted. Now, as this vehicle has been activated, all the data coming from this vehicle from manufacturers is put into our data pipeline and made available to you via our push API, but you can also use the REST API to get the latest available status of a specific vehicle using the vehicle API endpoint. And here we just have to pass in the VIN. So for convenience, I'll just copy it from here and hit send. And there we go. We got the data, that it's all harmonized, data format, the odometer, unit kilometers, the mileage is 93,831 kilometers, and the timestamp is from 8th of April, which was yesterday evening. So we get pretty fresh data from the last time the vehicle was driven. So there we go. We have the full cycle, creating a project, submitting it, getting it approved, then adding a vehicle and getting data for that vehicle as well. To complete the life cycle, it's important to mention the delete vehicle. So this is the endpoint you would be using at the end when you want to defleet vehicles, the vehicles that have left your fleet. You can just put in the VIN from here. And we can also do that now because I will not be using this vehicle any longer. You can see it goes into a revoking state, and I can get the list again. It's still in revoking state. So this also takes just a bit. Yeah, now it has gone to revoked, and you can see that the different state that this vehicle was only active for around 4 minutes during this demo. The last endpoint to show is the vehicle eligibility endpoint, which is a useful tool to use. You can pass in the VIN and the brand and get the eligibility of that vehicle and seeing if that vehicle can be activated or not. So if you're implementing this workflow into your into your service, then it always makes sense to first have a lookup, see if a vehicle is eligible for adding, and then you create the new vehicle clearance using the add vehicle endpoint. So hopefully that's useful for you and can help you also to get started with your projects inside of the platform. And if you have any questions, feel free to always reach out to us at High Mobility. We'll always be happy to help you. Thank you for watching.